I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we can have a roll call vote for the membership.
HARB Town.
Buda present.
Rob Harris.
Yamaka present.
Stuart Smith.
Bennett present.
Okay. We do have one more member who has not arrived yet this evening. I hope he will be joining us, and that's Benjamin Lewis of Browder Height, for those who may know him. He also lives in town. With that said, I'd like us to do a invocation and pledge of allegiance. So a moment of silence if we can first. Okay. I
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, our first order of business tonight, since this board has not met in some time, and we do have almost all new members at this point in time, we do need to do an election of chairman. So, with that said, I would open the floor to nominations.
I nominate Stuart Smith.
Second.
I second.
Are there any other nominations for the role of chairman? Hearing none, I'm going to close the nominations. We would
I
like
should
to
have come late. This is what I get for coming early.
And can we have a vote on Mr. Smith as our chairman?
HARB Town, aye.
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 Thank you.
It is a unanimous action. Mr. Smith, you are now in charge, so you can run the elections from here. So,
Okay, so we need a vice chairman, I guess.
Yes.
And I'll open that up to
I
anybody.
think Benjamin Lewis, he's not here. He can't say no.
It might be better if someone who has a bit of experience, and I think you do.
I think I've been to one meeting in all these years.
That doesn't mean anything. You've been on for a long time.
You've been on for a long time, so I'm gonna nominate you for vice chair.
Okay, as long as you promise never to miss a meeting.
I won't unless I'm,
I second that.
not here. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Objection? So ordered. Diane will be vice chair. I have a question about a regular meeting date. This board has never had regular meetings. We have met as required by activities, and the reason the board hasn't met in a long time is there hasn't been any proposals in front of the board. There might be some value to have a limited set of meetings for new members here to if we don't get through the whole list of things, because it's quite a lot here. And obviously, it took us a while when we were here before to get accommodated to that. So I'm open to having a couple of meetings if the members feel like they need some review and some education in terms of what the board has done in the past, what kind of precedents or anything that we've set, okay? And one thing I'll mention is that some of this information that Katie's proposed, this board has reviewed in the past. I think Steve was here. It might be worthwhile going over it again, and that is the design guidelines and the master plan for the harbor were documents that were reviewed by that. And when we get to that, I'll make some comments on there. But that may be worthwhile getting everybody up to speed on that, so that when we do have an actual proposal in front of us, we can all sort of work from the same playing field. I think also, didn't we put some requirements in for pre-meetings for this board? I know other boards that put them in. And I thought that was part of this board's rules and regulations, but Mr. Grossman can remember.
No, I'll just add, we changed the historic to kind of mimic what you guys are doing. You have a two-step process now.
Right.
That's written actually into your application process. The historic didn't, so they have adopted the pre-application meeting. So I think you're there already.
Okay. So one of the reasons for that, I think, is, and those of you who have been before, I think in my experience, we had some, I'll say, relatively poor inputs from applicants that were, running in at a meeting and saying, oh my God, let me go out to the car and get a pencil and paper and put something in front of you. the board has historically been in favor of projects in the harbor. I mean, our job is to look at them, adjust, and feedback anything that we think is relevant. We have council here and public to help us as well. So I think, that's one of the things that I think that process helps, is getting, so when we do have to actually make a vote and have some questions or put some restrictions or, some things that we want to do or feedback to council, that we have some high quality inputs. And they've been kind of variable. Some are really good and some are like, okay. So that's something to be aware of, that we've been a little bit lax, but now we should, I think, elevate. The harbor is a big asset to the town, one of the biggest assets the town has.
I'll weigh in if I may, Mr.
Oh, sure,
Mr.
go
Stewart.
ahead.
There have been substantial changes in the department as a whole, both in staffing and how we are processing applications at this point. So
Okay.
I can't say I've yet turned my attention to your applications that were reforms that might have been in place, just because we've been working on so many other facets of
Sure.
the department.
I got you.
But we currently have a consultant that's working with us to revise and revamp the historic district guidelines, and with that, we're revamping the application process for certificates of appropriation.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you give me some money too? Why
Yeah.
not? Appropriateness, and I think a lot of that work may help us transition your function and application process as well, because I do agree with you. While we were asking for things, I can't say they were always coming forward from the applicants, and they were still kind of marching through the system. We've put a stop to that at this point. They have to have the completed application. You may still get some tweaks coming in as we continue to work with the applicant, but
Good.
I think we're getting better, I hope. And I'm looking to Herb, because he's on the historic board, and he's been the recipient of that change that we've been going through.
100% better.
Okay.
So I hear you,
Thank you.
and it's our goal to ensure when it comes before you, I won't say we'll have all the answers for you, but you're gonna have a good chunk of the answers, and I do mean 90% of it will be before you. You still may disagree and turn them down or make changes to any application that comes forward, but we're gonna try and put you in the best position to review things.
Yeah, I mean, we had pushback when we felt like, we were kind of getting the fastest shuffle. And I think most of the projects the board has approved in the past have been fairly high quality and attribute, value added to town. But I just think, given potentially the scope of projects that might have a harbor, the dollars are gonna go up and the importance of those developments are gonna be more significant.
So the other item I'd like to chime, because you started with this, is setting a time of frequency. Again, we've had this throughout a couple of the boards that I staff for the department. They weren't really meeting, and it was hard to keep the information fresh. So one of the things that we wanted to do is at least publicize and establish a fixed time that you may meet if there are applications that come forward, so that
Okay.
we get that published and out there. We let you know 1 month in advance, has any application been filed? Nope, you've got that time free on your calendar. So we would love if we can at least book you, but hopefully don't have to call you in. I can tell you, because you've already gotten notice that we're gonna have a joint meeting with town council and the planning
Right.
commission.
In a second.
We are about to put you guys to work for a period of time. Because we also have recognized some of your governing doctrines of guidelines and vision and statement and planning for the harbor may need to be refreshed at this point.
Sure.
So we
Okay.
wanted, one, to have this convening, organizing meeting, and then two, now we're about to lay out a whole bunch of work for you to do at the next meeting.
So the meeting dates we had set up were established on a day and time every month,
Yep,
and did exactly what you said. If there was nothing to look at, it was canceled. But
it was
I
canceled.
think it's better to set something up that everybody has that agrees to an availability.
Yes, and we'd like to do that, because that way we publish a calendar on the website under your page, so everybody will have your application forms, they'll have a calendar, and with that calendar, there's the application deadline submission, which means all of it has to be in by that date, which we, right now, are setting 1 month in advance. So
Okay,
say
that's
if
a
you
good-
meet
that's a good
the
plan.
first day of every month, well, the prior month, the first day, you're gonna hear from us by close of business. Do you have any applications that are coming in? We've got a meeting coming in a
Right.
month. So,
I'm fine with that. I assume everyone else is. Does this evening work for people, or does some other date, some other evening work? Because I know there's lots of meetings in town, so.
being a novice here, I do agree with you 100% where all of us should be on the same page. And I couldn't consume all this in one night.
I understand, but she's gonna
Oh, you've
help-
had it for a
she's gonna-
week, Herb.
She's gonna help your education.
We didn't, it wasn't like the Bible. We really don't want you to read it all at once.
Okay, good. But I do agree with you that we should have either work session or probably a work session where, since you have more knowledge, I think, than I do. And I don't think that would hurt, that we could.
Katie, does this process that you talked about with the planning commission and stuff, does that sort of get us into helping with this
It
issue?
will, because, and I probably should have started off with this. Our town manager was going to also be at tonight's meeting, John Hosey, because he wanted to meet everybody, because he's not met you, any of you, in this capacity of being on the Harbor Area Review Board. So he also wanted to do a welcome and put this into context for what is going on in our other planning realms of zoning districts and overlays and guidance documents, because we're doing quite a lot of work on that. And I say all that because he had to be called out of town, unfortunately, so otherwise he was going to be here this evening. But yes, that was part of this, that is part of what's gonna happen at that Tuesday meeting, March 22nd, thank you. We're gonna really lay down the workload that we have at this point. We have a consultant working on an update with the planning commission and the town council on our comprehensive plan document.
Okay.
And as part of that process, we recognized the harbor piece of it needed some work,
Oh,
quite a bit of work.
yeah.
And so you were timely convened to help in that process.
So do you want to wait until the meeting of the 22nd to make that, or should we make that decision now?
It's up to your call, and
I don't
I know,
care one way or the
Mr.
other,
Lewis, I think it was Mr. Lewis and not you, Rob, who had a standing appointment on a Thursday evening?
I have
Or
a
was you?
Thursday evening.
Okay,
One,
so
yeah.
I knew that was a night
I have an
out.
occasional Thursday night meeting as well.
You have
But
a
every
standing
third
appointment
Thursday.
there.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say no to Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Right. So-
Also, could we do second and fourth week maybe?
And so we can wait at this point till we get through March 22nd. And I think after we hear that meeting and that presentation, and we kind of outline the scope of things, we are trying to get gaps filled.
Well, since
policies
everybody
updated.
sort of agreed to come tonight, let's hold this date as our date if it works for you guys.
Before we,
We can formalize it at the March 22nd
But
meeting.
just to be clear, we're talking first Wednesday of the month? Is that what you mean?
No, please no.
I don't,
well, also, before we
What date
pick
are we holding?
a
I don't
time,
know, Wednesday's the date, I know about the calendar issue.
Right, so
before we
hang on, it
pick
sounds
a
like we're still discussing
time,
it.
if I could just say, staff has to come out an awful lot of nights. If there's a way, and they're out, I mean, they're in early at 8 and they're
Right,
here
early
late.
night, yeah.
If there's a way that it works for people, that we could adjust time-wise to be a little bit more,
Flexible.
thank you. I'm sure
Okay.
staff would appreciate that, but I don't know if that's, everybody's available. that way.
We
Just
did
a-
that in the Historic Review Board. We moved our meeting till 4 o'clock, and that helps.
I can't do 4
Yeah,
o'clock.
because Mr. Lewis, I don't think can do,
Right.
according to his feedback, he can't
I
do
know
afternoon
that.
meetings because he's
He
a
would have
business
he would
guy.
have a challenge with the hours,
Most
because of
retired
his,
folks have a little more
of his
flexibility.
job. So I'm happy for us to
Let's
to
wait
hold this
until we have the
conversation.
22nd meeting, because we're gonna have everybody
Right.
there, and that's probably the best way to work out.
And that will give
Frequency
everyone a
and-
better understanding of what work we're about to push in your
Right.
direction and how much
Okay.
effort and time we're gonna need you
I'm
to
good for that.
expend as well.
Okay. Works
Because
for me.
there is no application in our department for a development proposal on any parcel in the overlay, in the harbor district, in what I think is the overlay harbor district. And I say that because we'll talk about that. I'm not sure I know the exact mapping of the overlay district, and we can
Well,
talk about that.
Paul, I was on the mayor's committee for rezoning the railroad property when that came up. And there were maps that were, at least we made note of some needs to change the way that Mason Avenue and that mixed-use
Right.
corridor worked and behind next to the railroad property. Has that map ever been officially updated?
Yeah, and that's one of my comments when I was in front of you guys. There is an overlay map that has been adopted by town council.
That's what I
You
thought.
need to have in your package.
I could not locate it, Paul, so if you know where you can get your hands on it, let me
It's in a
know.
drawer somewhere.
November 21st, 2019 was the last town council approval of the text amendments that you have in your package.
Right.
I couldn't
And
find
it
the
also-
map.
Also had the map in there as well.
It just wasn't attached to the minutes document, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, you got to go to the actual agenda.
Okay, I'll look
Right.
again.
But the minutes say the text and the map has been, I just
Right,
wanted
it
to check
did.
it myself.
Yeah.
So it did say that.
Okay.
Okay, good, thanks. I disconnected that before I'm here. All right, we'll agree to move on?
I do wanna come back for your secretary,
Oh, we have the secretary, that's right.
am I good
Normally,
to put
Miss
you forward or
Tracy
no?
is.
So, and we're gonna have to talk about, cause her time is getting extremely pressed, but
I was gonna say, she's got too many jobs.
we're gonna deal with that. So it sounds like she might be willing for a period of time to serve as your secretary for right now. So
Okay.
I just wanna let you know that.
I nominate Tracy.
Second.
Third and fourth and fifth.
Okay. So, we do have a public comment, sign up. Mr. Grossman.
How long does he have?
Yeah, 3 minutes, right?
How many
Who's got
minutes
the
does he have?
timer?
You can get it under 30 minutes.
Right now, he's open because we have not formally adopted the
There
rules
you
of
go.
public
Oh,
comment.
man.
He must have known that when he signed
We have
up.
dinner brought in.
All right, I had 3 items. One talks about the overlay map,
Right.
the fact that we did have it, it's not in your package, I skimmed, I couldn't find it, but it's there, it redefines, you need to understand what's there. It may still need to be looked at because the map fronts Mason. And I know the historic district overlaps
Right.
with that. So as we're talking to the consultant and we straighten out the historic district, we'll probably come back and talk to you as well and saying, okay, so what is the real dividing line? Is it Mason or is it one building off of Mason, 140 feet back or
We
something?
moved that line, right?
Yeah, but right now, the map, the overlay map shows it along Mason. So it's one thing we'll have to reconcile in the future.
Okay.
The harbor master plan, the 2006 plan, for the comprehensive plan, we were adopting to really retire it and bring in the pertinent sections into the comprehensive plan. Right now, if you go to the 2016 plan, you almost have to work with both documents. You gotta work with the 2016 comprehensive plan, and it references in a number of places, go see the 2006 harbor plan.
Right.
Our intent when we were doing the comprehensive plan, this update, pull in what we need into the comprehensive plan and kind of archive the 2006. That was the intent. I just want to lay that in front of you. I think we've talked to the consultant, and that's one of the reasons we have the joint meeting of all parties to kind of, okay, so what do we want to look at?
So it's my recollection that we as a board reviewed that plan and asked Larry DeRee to get funding from council to update it.
Well, yeah,
I
they,
don't believe that ever happened, even though he might have indicated that it did. It really didn't happen, I think. And I don't think the money was, I think it was $40,000 or $50,000.
no.
Council never allocated the money for that. That plan really is defunct, in my view. It's irrelevant to the
All
reality.
right, so
of
that's
life.
my third item.
Okay, sorry, I don't want to take your thunder.
The plan, the master plan will be pulled in the comp plan, that's the intent, but the design guidelines are out of whack too. We changed the zoning and made certain allowances and flexibilities in that area. Now we're out of whack with what the design guidelines say. I'm just telling you right now, we're putting the budget together for the next fiscal year. If you want to start talking about updating those design guidelines using a consultant, now's the time to start talking about it.
So
I did put some money in the planning department for a consultant again.
And that's where it would reside. So the adequacy is gonna be, and I don't know how long, we still have a consultant for the comp plan that will run out. But
Right.
if you don't park money, never gonna happen.
So the board did review the design guideline, I think it was in 2018, somewhere back there. At the time, with the perspective of what we knew at the time, the board thought those design guidelines were appropriate for what was there, but now you're suggesting that changes that are coming on in the.
Yeah, for instance, just an example, we allow PUD
Right,
in that area.
that's right.
That wasn't there before.
That wasn't there.
Well, okay, if you look at the design guidelines, it's kind of all commercial with residential above.
Right,
Okay,
Mixed
it's
use.
not gonna fit in that
it's
48.
like the Mason Avenue zoning, right,
Right,
basically.
right. So that's all I wanted to impart, future activities.
Seems like to me that's something that we should, again, maybe this March 22nd, but if there's money there or we need money, we should raise our
Now's
hands
the time
now.
to, yes,
Okay.
ensure
Yeah,
that.
I mean, those design guides were done when there was a whole different outlook for the town than
Right.
there is right now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
As I
Thank you,
said,
that's all I
appreciate
wanted.
Just to update you, so the consultant that's working on our comp plan, we've also engaged with them, what we're calling phase 2 of their work product, which is they're going to help us get to a clean zoning map that's actually accurate and reflects all the zoning changes that are supposed to be there. And they are also going to be working on revisions to ensure that once the comp plan is adopted, if there are relevant changes that need to be proposed to effectuate the comp plan, they will make that into the zoning ordinance. So they will be working on some revisions and updates to the zoning ordinance for us. So that's why we felt it was so important to get this board back together so that we tag you in to some of that work product that's been engaged and commissioned. But as Paul indicated, I submitted the department budget a week ago. I included, I want to say $20,000 or $25,000 as a request for some additional consulting services for the department, figuring this might need some help.
Do you think that's enough?
Is that enough? It sounds, based on what we had before.
It
that
may or
that
may
be a
not be
little light.
enough, but right now I felt if I asked too high, I might be blown out of the water. Since we are now working with 2 consultants for doing various updates out of this year's budget. I parked a lot of money in this year's budget that was approved by council. I don't know if they would bite again that high, but if I need to amend it, we can advance that when we have that conversation with town council.
Don't get what you don't ask for.
That's
Right.
true.
Rather ask for more and get less than ask for less.
Well, and sometimes the beauty is when you tell people this is all we have, sometimes miraculously the consultant can do the work just for that amount too.
Do you expect any of that money to be remaining and as carryover for next year's
No,
budget?
we are fully committed, the funds we have in this
Okay.
year's budget for our 2 consulting contracts, one for the historic district guidelines and one for the comp plan update and the zoning revisions and zoning map.
Just so I'm clear,
Sure.
the guidelines for the Harbor District will be a variation of, there'll be some things added on? Or is that the whole question, exactly how much different they're gonna be?
Well, that's just it. Right now, these are the guidelines. What we've given you are the guidelines that have been adopted by the community. So how much can we revise them ourselves? Do we need to engage a separate consultant to do this for us? And what do we want to come out of that product?
Okay.
I think that is the conversation that's headed your way, yes.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
okay.
any more thoughts? Okay, I think the next item is approval of the agenda format. I have no objection. Any objections to approving the format?
No.
Okay,
Make a motion, we approve the agenda format.
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Objections? Okay, approved. All right, so we're into, I think, the major thrust of this packet here this evening on the new business. And maybe, Katie, maybe you want to make some remarks here to
Sure.
kind of get us off on the track here.
Sure, and I'm actually not looking for us to go into detail and discuss each element, each document I provided for you. I think more than anything, I was trying to make sure everybody had in their possession and created you your own library, basically, of what I think are the governing documents that you're gonna need to do this job on this board. And partly, I hope I've identified all the right ones, and thank God Paul was here, because he shed some light on where I could find the overlay map, because that was the one document I couldn't put my hands on. And if there are any others that you, Stuart, or Steve know that should be also provided to the rest of the board members, please let me know, because again, you have the history here. I can't say locating our records has been a fun project for our department, just because we've moved repeatedly, we've lost staff repeatedly, so our continuity is not our strong suit at the moment. So we're working to improve that, and hopefully we can, so that's really what I wanted to do, is at least make sure you had them in your hands. So yes, I did provide you a couple of zoning related documents, because that really is the heart of your authority. So you have the district regulations of the harbor, which is section 3.9. Those are relevant and important, and they do get looked at first when an application comes in. And then, of course, I go to the overlay district, which has been established for the harbor. They can and will supersede if there's conflict between the two documents. The harbor overlay takes precedence over those, so. And then from there, again, if an application comes in, I am now defaulting to go look at the conceptual master plan to see, is this in line with the premise of where you guys wanted to see the harbor go? And then also the harbor area design standards are relevant in part of this process, so. The other zoning article I included, which maybe you're wondering why I did this, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area Overlay District. It's relevant to what you're doing, just because you guys are the whole town is in the Chesapeake Bay Act mapping, and specifically for the harbor area, you are what's called an IDA, or an intensely developed area. So when the Chesapeake Bay Act was adopted by this community, you have the ability to identify areas that might not have to fully comply or could receive some sort of criteria waivers based upon their use and location. And clearly right around the harbor, you are smack in the watershed. And so definitely there's a preservation and a right of certain uses to have some leniency in that review process, especially if you're a water dependent facility. And
Because
hopefully
it's
most
all IDA.
Yes, because it's
Yeah.
all IDA. So that was really relevant. I wanted to make sure you're aware of those things. So that doesn't mean that they get to blow past and never have to factor in the Chesapeake Bay Act ordinance, but there are provisions for us to review them under that standard, that's all. And I have provided those maps. Again, it's another one of those, it was hard to find a truly adopted map, just there have been multiple versions of the map that have gone through town council. Hopefully we're gonna get that cleaned up in this process as well.
Katie,
Yes.
before we get off the Chesapeake Bay Preservation, is there another group that looks over the Chesapeake Bay Preservation?
It's me as your zoning administrator, that's my responsibility in doing zoning review.
Okay,
We get audited, I shouldn't say audited. We have to submit an annual report to DEQ as to our compliance with the Bay Act and what applications have come through. I'm in the midst of doing that annual report. And then there's a potential, we are supposed to be audited every 5 years, but so far DEQ has not been funded for those audits to happen, so it's been at least 9 years since they have done the audit function across the state.
Now, we do have a wetlands board that does have some purvey over things like the beaches and stuff, stuff that.
They do, they are the wetlands and sand.
Coastal dune.
Coastal
Coastal
dune.
dune, there's the word, thank you. So they do take into those things, the wetlands, but they do not administer the RPA or the RMA, that falls under my function. So I handle that at this point. The IDA, I have not had an application come in relative to the IDA piece of the Chesapeake Bay Act, but I think the rules are pretty clear how you evaluate and look at them and determine if it's really an appropriate use and function under there.
okay, thank you.
So let me make one more remark about, some of the contributions this board can make. One of the things, you may say, well, this is just another wad of paper, this design spec and harbor master plan. But the sense that we had in the prior board was that as a community, we wanted to express the community's standards, if you will, for, and some developer comes in and says, I'm gonna develop, 40 acres out here in the railroad property. We wanted to have something in writing that was voted by the council and us to say that we had some sense of gauging whether or not those development proposals met what the citizens represented by our council, so that we have some way to say, let's push and pull on this and not so much on that. part of what we did as the rezoning of the harbor district as well is in the rules and regulations that you will read about streets, viewscapes, and all those other things. So we did quite a lot of work in that mayor's board a couple years ago, I think now. But that codified a lot of things, but these design guidelines and the harbor master plan are really important in my sense. So I think that that's something that this board really needs to get its teeth into eventually here, working with the consultant if we can get the funding. Because that will make a major impact on what's gonna happen and how it happens and how we can, make sure that the town doesn't get overrun with something that the citizens don't want. Okay, we have some standards that point to, just like our zoning and other amendments. We have a sense of having discussed that, put it in front of the public, let them talk about it, feedback to us. So we do have a fairly high purpose, other than just sort of a project, somebody comes in and says, hey, I wanna put a dock over here or a building over there. I see these design guidelines as a really important part of our workload.
I think that with the likelihood of all 40 acres being developed by one developer is pretty small. And that would be, well, all this is into the future anyway. But if there are small projects that come along, I think we want to make sure we're not just dumping anything, that there's a cohesive, and that's what our design guidelines and master plan would be
Right, so the
about.
design the codification of the zoning rules is pretty good. I mean, we did a lot of work on that in terms of what kind of streets you have, what the front of the buildings have to look like, what's allowed in the district. For instance, Bay Creek was a PUD, it's a huge one, a couple thousand acres. We allowed PUDs of 5 acres because we wanted to be flexible with, if we didn't have one single developer, like we did with Bay Creek, come in and say, okay, here's what I want to move, and everybody gets to look at that, and then you can use that way to regulate that developer. We thought that some smaller scale, now it may be that never happens, but we thought that flexibility was worthwhile, and it's codified in what the streets have to look like. They all have to be VDOT streets, and no cul-de-sacs, no dead ends. Things like that are codified in the zoning rules that mayor's board did a couple of years ago. This is a little bit higher level and saying, we don't want signs that are, and again, the town has regulations of all kinds of things. But for a harbor perspective, we wanted to have our input into those design guidelines, which, as Steve points out, now are ancient. They just need to be redone, that's all, like anything. Okay.
So the other document, as Paul noted, I gave you at least the excerpts of the 2016 comp plan. I think that is one of the challenges we've been having is the 16 kept referencing back older comp plan versions to reference some of the documents. So yes, in this new round of update that we're doing, the 5-year update, we are hopefully going to achieve a product where it will be the standalone comp plan document you have to refer to, and only that. But in the interim, I wanted to at least give you those references so you can see how it was discussed as and again, for those who don't know the comp plan and its role for us, it is meant to be the overarching growth and vision of where everybody would like to see the town be in a 5-year plan. And we don't do it longer than that because conditions always change. And our goal is, and requirement by the Code of Virginia, is we do a review and determine if an update is necessary every 5 years. So there's always a chance to bend and change as need be. And if a particular circumstance starts to arise and we feel the comp plan may be out of step to where we're going, amendments can happen during the course of any year to a comp plan as well. So I don't want you to think it is frozen in time. It is not a frozen document. I just know it just takes time to do amendments. So we try not to do them every year. But with that said, we wanted to at least give you that information so you have it handy without having to go find all the comp plan documents and associated things with them. And then lastly, we have been working on ensuring we have an updated index of all of the approvals issued by the various boards that my department is responsible for. And one of those is this body, and so we have provided you the index of what we've approved over the years, what you guys have. Stuart, you did, no. it doesn't mean that I can share then all the appropriate documents, but we at least wanted to give you a sense and a flavor of what's been approved of the activity around the harbor, and hopefully you find that document useful. We did present it to you by street address, I think is how we did this one. So to make it a little easier versus year. I may have done both, I can't remember.
This is a point of humor.
In the
Okay.
agenda part. And again, that was just information, just so you knew what had happened of activity across this board. And it was everything from the shanty got approved that way, the bathhouse got approved that way, the yacht center, I think, went that way. I can't remember what else was in the list.
So the Harvey
Condos.
House, the Hook at Harvey,
Yes.
I think we approved 5 different plans for that thing before it finally cemented where it is today.
And then it came in by barge, yes.
Yeah, it came in by barge to
Well,
start.
that's why I kept changing, because it was still on wheels.
Yeah, it's still movable.
So that, and I put that in just so you had a flavor of what has been approved and are still valid and legal, development plans that happened around the harbor, so. And that's it of the governing doctrines that we included here, so you're welcome to discuss them further tonight if you have questions, but this is gonna take time for a lot of you, just to kind of work through the process. It doesn't seem like a natural process. When I first read this, and I've been in the government world 28 years now, so it has taken me more than one read to make sure I know the process of what an application needs to do from start to finish. And then if it gets appealed, how that process needs to flow as well. So I don't expect you to know those off the top of your list, and hopefully the staff can help be your crutch for you to walk you through that. So we will always have a staff report with any application that comes in. We will do the analysis for you. We will show you what they are proposing. You will always get the full application packet that is submitted by the applicant. We never don't give you that. That is always part of it. But you will get a comprehensive staff report, and we will put a recommendation in there, which you can take on, or you can overrule and go your own way. No offense taken by staff at all. I just want you to feel free to know that, okay?
If I could say one thing.
Yes.
One of the biggest complaints we got with the process was the length of time it took
Yeah.
to get from one end to the other. And it was extremely long. So anything as we're moving forward that we can do to shorten the length of the process, I know would be appreciated by applicants, because it routinely took a year.
Wow. Yeah, so we're 4 weeks
That's
of it,
between
just,
us and council,
Oh.
right?
Right.
Or just
The whole
not
thing.
this board, but the whole process end to end.
But I mean, once, just the process for the board was tremendously
Yeah,
long.
that was a major point.
Joint public hearings would be something that would help speed that. That would knock a month out of it.
Complete applications.
Yeah, I mean, part of it was the applicants, were
Yeah.
trying to fast run stuff. And I understand that because they have commercial interests, okay? But it's not good for a town to have reputation. I mean, we want quality investment, we want quality developers. And taking a year costs a lot of money and can lead to somebody else saying, I'll take my money and invest somewhere else. So it is definitely a good point Steve's making. It's a problem I think a lot of government organizations have. It's just, there's so many pieces to look at, but anything we can do
Sure,
to integrate that and make it better is.
That's a
something.
great point, and we've heard that on other boards, and so I think we've been working really hard on that. And I'm with Diane on this point. It's ensuring that they know what a completed application packet means. And we recognize for the last year plus, every industry is beyond capacity, especially in the building trades, which includes all your engineers, your surveyors, everybody doing the site work component and planning piece. And so we have tried to make some flexibility, saying, okay, we may still be waiting on the survey and site plan coming in. As long as I know the date that it's gonna come, then I can schedule you for the meeting, so that I get it. Even if I get it 2 days before, at least I'm gonna get it and know it's ready for your approval, and not wait the whole month until I get it in my office, then show it to you.
Right.
So we have been working that way on the historic board, on the planning commission side, to keep things moving along. We're cognizant some of the businesses are seasonally challenged and driven by. So we have been working really hard with those to ensure that they are getting in all their stuff in for the spring meetings at the latest, so so that they can still get their work done for the season if they're trying to get open for the summer. So we will bring that same attention to detail and working with every applicant to get them there. I will recognize some of yours, if they really do come forward, may be a much larger consideration, because they may be bigger projects. They may be larger pieces of land than the downtown area is used to. Especially if we see something happen of a development on the railroad property, that may strike a different timeline, but it rightfully should, just because it's gonna have a much larger impact and a long-term, view shed for the community. But I hear it, and we have worked really hard to clean that up, and I think getting publicized your meeting dates and the times for getting in completed applications is a huge step forward. It's no longer, well, when we can convene the board. So, no, they know when the dates are and when the applications come in, and getting everything online has been really important for our other boards, and we're gonna do the same for you as well.
Didn't I see some process where there's some kind of pre-meetings with applicants? And I just assumed that one of those pre-meetings was to make sure you did some checking and make sure we had everything we needed.
Yes. So, as Mr. Grossman referenced, we wanted to follow your model, and that's what got built into the historic district. We found that a little problematic, just in terms of trying to convene the board, all these functions. So we've taken a little tweak for the historic board. I'm gonna pick on them for a minute. For the most part, most of the residentials don't have to do the pre-application meeting.
Okay.
Separate. So what we do is we bring it forward. It may still be called a pre-application when it's on the agenda, but I also put the recommendation, I think it's ready for approval as a certificate of appropriateness. So I think we can do it all in one step at that meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
There are a couple of times where, and we've had the agreement from the historic board, especially where it's sitting in commercially zoned districts, we've actually called them into a special meeting, usually during the weekday, and it may be the full board if we're trying to get them to take a vote, or we may pull in just two members to help be the sounding board for the applicant. And we typically do it on site, because that has been really helpful for everybody to be on site to get the view shed component of it. And that has worked really well. We've moved 4 applications pretty quickly through the process for the
Very
commercial
quick.
products.
Mm.
So that has been
That's
helpful.
important.
And when I say that, that was beach, I don't know about Beach Market. Custom Carts was that, which is supposed to
We
be.
did Beach Market.
Beach Market was an
Yeah.
on-site one. We did the golf cart was on-site, the mini golf that's going in.
Across from Rayfields.
And then, we did the
Kellogg Building.
Kellogg building, which that one's coming, it's coming to you guys next. They're about finished, ready with their whole
Fantastic.
application, but.
Yeah, we did a lot.
So I've really listened to this complaint from the community. I think we've made some really important changes in how we're operating in the department, yes.
Katie, my only concern with allowing too much flexibility on when materials come in is that for the public, when things are out there a couple of weeks in advance, the public has a chance to look at it and see what those site plans are and how it might impact them. If we say, well, it's okay if it comes in 2 days before, I think some of the public might feel, why didn't we get a chance to see this?
So when I say this, like, for right now when I'm doing this, I'm talking with the surveyors. Their site plan isn't changing much. It's a smaller house or a smaller structure that may be existing on there. They're adding an addition or something of that nature, so it's not changing a huge amount of the footprint. They're just doing their final, crossing their T's, dotting their I's kind of stuff before it gets submitted and accepted by them as the product they want to put forward to us. So in that regard, for the most part, I get a draft, and I'm waiting on the final to get sent into the department as a whole. Again, some of these may be a little trickier, and we may not be able to have that flexibility, because if I'm doing a site plan, again, gonna pick the old Hobby property, if you're doing a site plan for that, that's a much bigger site plan, and it's gonna take a lot more work, and we're gonna wanna have that in hand before we bring them to a hearing, so bring them to a meeting.
Also, remember that this board's role is to recommend to council, so there's another bite at the apple for the public.
Yes.
I mean, my recollection is we have had very little public interest in this board. It tends to be sort of specialized. But again, even if we do one of those short-term things, the public will have another chance to express its opinions at council meeting, where council would take it up. It can say no and pass it back to us, that can go on, you know, for a little bit. So there are other opportunities. This isn't the final due before something happens.
Right, and Ken is a representative from the planning commission, so he's got a great point from this, because it's their job to make the recommendation, just like this board,
Right.
make a recommendation up the chain. So it's important to make sure you guys have the full information before that recommendation moves forward.
Right.
I get that point very well. And you're right, occasionally the public may say, we didn't have enough time to review that, and that may be part of the consideration we're gonna have to give as to how we consider a deemed application to move forward. Okay.
Other comments?
So there isn't a test on all the stuff that I stayed up
There
late
is.
to read?
We just kinda handed it out yet.
Is that what we're saying?
Proctors will be around shortly.
And actually, you get to
blue book
nominate
will
one
be out
person,
there.
so I guess it'll
And
be
it's
Ben
not an
who has to
open
take
book
the
test
test.
either. You have to memorize the entire 200 pages.
Okay.
Okay, so our next thing is this announcement of the meeting. I think we're aware, is everyone aware of that meeting on the 22nd?
Other business first?
We do, we have other business
We have
first,
other
do we?
business?
I
Okay.
know I've been talking a lot, so it looks like
Oh,
I've already
sorry, I
done my
missed that.
report. I know.
I skipped, sorry.
So again, this is new for me, or new to the town that I put in place. I want to give a report of what I've done for my activities on your behalf, of anything that is relevant to your function. So yes, I emailed out to you 2 weeks ago or so, that I did administrative approval of the site plan for 6 Mason Avenue, which more formally, sorry if I keep calling it, it's the former Tobby property. It's owned now by Cape Charles Marine,
It's the Royal Farms.
thank
Yeah.
you.
John, what's his name?
Kim.
John Kemp.
John Kemp. Yeah.
Yes, so we have been working with them throughout the last few months of what work can happen on there, because as everyone knows, they do have the clamming operation occurring over there. They are looking to move that elsewhere on the site, and so that's what I signed off on and shared with you at this point. And that can and was handled as administrative approval under that authority in our ordinance. The next item I just wanted to give you.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Sure.
Did they share the motivation for doing that?
Has been actually in response to the town working with them over various comments, complaints, and criticisms that have come in since it started last summer.
Okay.
And again, that startup last summer was approved through my office.
Mhm.
So I don't want anybody to think they just did it and nobody knew about it. We did know about it.
Okay.
Now that we have a better understanding of the scope and breadth of that operation, we worked with them to see how we could tweak and improve that.
Okay.
For those who front directly on Mason. And so we think that will be a great improvement,
Okay, thank you.
so. The next item is the town council this last summer, adopted 2 new policies that are effective for all their boards and committees as well as for themselves, and it is an open meeting law, public records component. I think in that regard, there were some comments about how we were doing citizen comment periods across all boards. So we wanted to formalize that, which happened. So we've provided that policy for you. We've also given you one associated with conflict of interest. And what was the other, there's another name to your policy.
Ethics?
Thank you, ethics. So I just wanted to provide you both of those. I think they also require, once you've had a chance to digest, we do need to get a signature from you that we have provided you this copy. And if you turn that into Tracy, that would be great, because we put that on file with the office and we give it to all of our board members. One thing that I did not see in the record or in the historical documents is that you guys had a rules of procedure manual of some sort. So it's the other thing I've been doing since I've come on board with the town, is I've been working my way through all the boards that I staff to give them the formal rules of procedure. So really how we hold public hearings and what that conduct is, and just some general things. So I will get to yours, and part of that, I will attach these 2 policies to make them part of that. So it's all in one document that you will have as part of your binder at some point. I did want to talk about the open meeting law for a minute, because it's part of what I would do for normal orientation of new members, but we figured most of you are new to this board. Just about all of you have received some training on it on the other boards you sit on. But you are governed by the open meeting law of Virginia, and what that means is everything is pretty much public of what you're doing. There may be a few exceptions that would come forward and qualify. If we have a business prospect that comes in that you're going to oversee, there may be information contained in that application that would be deemed a closed session or exempt in some capacity, we will make you aware of that and you deal with it appropriately. But for 90% of what you do, 95% of what you do, it's open. Everything we're doing is open. A meeting is defined as more than 2 members, so just keep that in mind. It has to be posted, we have to take minutes, everything gets recorded as to what you're doing. Your emails, because they do not have town-issued email accounts. So, what I ask of any board that doesn't get a town-issued email account is if you're going to be communicating about things related to this board, CC myself and/or Tracy to it. Because then, that way you've now looped in a town account, and we will be your records retention purveyor of these transactions. The significance of that is if a Freedom of Information Act or FOIA request comes in to the town, if I can't produce that in response to that query, but we know you were probably having some conversations with people, maybe electronically, we're gonna have to come to you and say, we're gonna need access to your personal computer and we gotta look through it for this purpose. So we'd rather not do that to you. So that's the only thing I ask is if you're gonna have some chatter amongst yourselves, make sure you're CCing somebody on the staff so that we are your repository. I think that's the broad strokes of the open meeting law, but it's in the, what? Oh, that's fine. Right, so we do have a little orientation packet. I'm happy to share this with you about the staff and what we do for you, and then what the open meeting laws and the things that get covered by it, et cetera. So if you want a copy of this, I'm happy to email this out to everybody just so you have it. And that's it, unless you have any other questions for me about this.
I'll take one, please.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have one again.
Okay, so we will email it to everybody so you have it electronically, and if you need a printed copy, now Tracy can tell you, are they allowed to go print at the library? Yes. So each board is allowed, if you're trying to print an agenda or material relative to the agenda, you can get it printed, 1 copy, for free at the library. So,
Not off of that.
not off of that, but you can use a computer terminal at the library, just type into the website, because we will post this to a docs page so that you can find it easily. So I'll make sure we add it to this agenda. Yeah, okay?
It's okay to add one thing on the open meeting,
Yes,
is emails count. So if she sends an email out to everybody, everybody doesn't reply to all, because
That's not
when everybody's included in it, that can be considered a meeting.
right.
right. That's a legal thing.
And when I am sending it out to all of you, it is just to pretty much inform you that, oh, we got a meeting, or I'm trying to get a query, are you available this day?
Right. Just answer to Katie, don't
Yes.
Right.
reply all.
So, I'll never be out there saying, how will you vote on this? No, you'll never get an email like that from me. So,
It's also my knowledge that I think Mr. Kemp now is the owner of the Yacht Center. Are you aware of that?
The property.
He has some interest in it. Yeah, I don't know that he's a sole owner, but I know that,
Well, Eric
It is-
told me that he retains 10%, and I think the ferry property, the Tabby property as well, but those are minor interests. So he controls a lot of the harbor resources that are undeveloped as of today.
okay. So, now I'm done.
Now we're going to do, sorry, my eyes skipped over that. Is everyone aware of the 22nd meeting and okay with that? I think that was, everybody had a chance to speak up on that. And you'll put out an agenda for that? Is there an agenda for that yet?
And I'm going to actually turn to Libby, because it's not my meeting. It is one being convened through town council.
An agenda will be put out,
Okay,
probably the week prior to.
okay, thank you.
So since they're the top dogs in town, they're the top dogs in a joint meeting.
Okay. Any other questions that anybody has, based on your first dip into the pool here? I think everyone has the vested interest in doing well here, and I think that everyone is especially me, is thankful for your time and everybody's investing time for the town. It's a responsibility, and it's good that we have people who are willing to step up and help the town get through these. I think my experience a little bit in getting exposed to the town is the process of legislation and drafting these kind of things is very complex, because the town, I went to an ethics training session a couple of years ago or so, where the town lawyer came in and sort of educated us, and the town is subject to federal, state, and local regulations. So what we do here is inevitably constrained by a lot of complex rules and regulations, and Ms. Katie here is obviously in the center of that. But I think you'd be stunned once you learn a little bit more about this, how difficult it is just to move a crumb of sand on the beach forward. It's a good thing to do. It's not easy. And so everybody's got to, put some sweat equity into this process to make it as good as we can. But it's, we're all collectively in charge of our vision for the town and its destination. So I'll thank you on behalf of the former members of the board for your time.
And we thank you as well for your service and we're your staff, and we're here to help you, so you can always reach us in the office, and we'll do the best we can to help you guys. Okay?
Okay, do we have a motion to
I'll
adjourn?
make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All right, all approved, I assume yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much.